Binge the full week of The Ray Taylor Show ad-free over at patreon.com/inspired disorder.
What you manifest in your mind, you can bring to reality.
Cannibal Holocaust is a horror movie that most people should never watch. Trigger warnings. You're the kind of person that might get triggered by certain things that might be depicted or talked about from the movie called Cannibal Holocaust. You have been warned. You have been warned because I watched it and I'm going to talk about all of the gruely details of this film, which I thought was overall a really good story. Brutal, but also confusing. Like the whole time watching this movie, just by the nature of the story, it's about how like these people manufacturing documentary footage, and you're constantly, while watching this movie, questioning what you're watching is real or not. Not necessarily on multiple levels while you're watching this movie, you're questioning what's real and what isn't. Not only, as you're discovering what this documentary crew fabricated, but also what you're seeing. Because there are some visceral, graphic, horrific imagery things in this movie, similar to like a Faces of Death. This movie, so Saturdays, I want to review. I generally have been reviewing classic movies that are kind of blind spots in my movie knowledge. Cannibal Holocaust is a movie that I had never seen, definitely heard about, and is part of the Video Nasties list, on the list of movies that have been prosecuted for potentially breaking laws because of some of the things. I mean, this movie has graphic depictions of people getting brutally murdered, raped, abortions, but you're also seeing tragic violence towards animals, which completely looks real. But then there's also some of the human violence stuff that, I mean, clearly you could tell it's fake, but then there's some other stuff with the human stuff that looks just as real as the turtle scene, which is brutal. This whole movie is brutal. But again, the question, and it's the theme of the movie, but also the question of what am I seeing? Am I seeing a turtle being butchered? Is that what I'm seeing? Am I seeing a muskrat being killed? Very just very inefficiently? Did I just see a pig get shot? Because I don't think I'm actually I don't think anybody was actually raped, despite the fact that those scenes look brutal. But clearly, when they're crushing somebody's skull, it doesn't look like they're really crushing somebody's skull. But the way this is shot, it's beautifully shot, despite the fact it's gritty and shaky, and the actual theatrical film versions of this movie are shot in a very kind of a standard, almost lower quality way, which I feel adds contrast to the documentary footage that a lot of this movie is, that looks real. Like the contrast of reality in what we're seeing in the kind of the theatrical version where, the studio, so the idea of this movie is that a documentary crew who's done other really brutal documentaries in the past, they're going to the Amazon to do a documentary on these cannibal tribes that live in the Green Zone, or the Green Inferno, which is another movie that I think I want to watch. I think it's like a sequel to this in some ways, but completely different. I don't know. I've seen it, but after watching this, I want to revisit it. So this documentary crew is going to do a documentary on these tribes, they go missing. And a scientist has been tasked with the job to go into this green inferno to try and recover whatever he can recover. If there's survivors, the footage, just whatever he can, just to get information on what happened to this documentary crew. So then you see him go, and you see how he's being treated by the tribes, how they're very tentative and very aggressive and very, not treating him very hospitably. But somehow, they see some brutal stuff. Muskrat getting killed. You're seeing this adultery ceremony thing taking place. He tries to a lot of nudity, a lot of like the tribes people in this. I don't know how they it seems like authentic, like they actually went to tribes out in the Amazon and filmed them. It's what it looks like when they're out in these areas. So anyway, they kind of survive. They bond with a particular tribe by, he has a recording of of one of their guys doing a chant, and the guy recorded it on his tape recorder. And the fact that he's able to play that tape recorder recording back to them, they think he's like magical or whatever, so they don't kill him. And they find the film reels. He brings the film reels back. So a lot of this movie is this scientist wanting to see what they filmed, and them going through the footage, as well as the studio going through the footage, because they want to put this thing out. That's what they paid for, and that's what they want to put this documentary out. And while looking through the footage, they see that this documentary crew, who's already been accused of paying people off to do certain things in other documentaries, you start seeing what these four people were actually doing, which is the most horrific thing. They show up to these people who treated them nice when they showed up, not anything like how aggressive they were when the second wave of people show up, but they're just kind of like, oh, these people are here. They shot one of these tribes people, and they're like, oh, we wounded him, so he'll be slow, so we'll actually be able to follow him to the tribes to see where they live. And that's how they find, that's how these documentarians find these tribe. And immediately when they show up to this village, they start fucking with people. They kill the pig, like I said, and it looks like they shot a pig. I mean, I know some animals can act, but it looked like he just shot a pig. And I think this director's been in movies, animal cruelty in movies. I mean, just look up the history of Milo and Otis, that family film about a cat and a dog on an adventure, and how many of those animals died in the filming of that. But there are some brutal scenes in this one, which I have to imagine are real. So I watched this, by the way, on Shudder. Shout out to Shudder. So if you want to watch it, that's where it is located. Surprisingly, because this is a brutal movie. So they show, and you see them just doing lighting their shit on fire, keeping people inside the hut while it's burning, killing they just terrorized this entire thing. Meanwhile, fabricating shots to make it look like the other tribe is attacking. Everything you see them doing, they're doing tenfold how inhuman. They're doing inhuman things at a 10x level to get a 1x level of what they're fabricating. There's these warring, the idea is that there's these two warring tribes, and they eat people. And I would imagine they eat, if they kill one of somebody from the other tribe, they're basically hunting each other. But it's the thing. So anyway, you see these. So the scientist, back in the thematic world of this universe of this movie, is just disgusted but the studio is like, well, maybe we can make this work. Like they're trying to make it work. They're seeing how fabricated everything is. The scientist is like, I can't back this. This is just disgusting. I don't want to have anything to do with this. And the production company or the distribution company is like, no, we can make this work. We can make this work. And then they have like this final screening where they see this other footage. A little over 4 years ago, I started The Many Faces. It's an ongoing series of abstract ink portraits. Each piece is improvised. Each piece is released daily. Start collecting now. Head on over to inspireddisorder.com/TMF. That stands for The Many Faces. And save yourself 25% when you use coupon code RTS. That stands for The Ray Taylor Show, because that's what you're listening to, and I love you. So I want you to save 25% when you use that coupon code. Head on over to inspireddisorder.com/TMF and use coupon code RTS to save 25% when you start collecting one of over 1,600 original ink paintings. By myself, I made them. Support me. I love you. Back to the show. And then they have like this final screening where they see this other footage, and it's just, you're seeing them rape one of the girls from the tribe, like they're running a train on her, and they're one of the four in this documentary crew is a woman, but you know, she like says no. And she like, I mean, there's a scene where it feels like she's almost being raped by her own. I mean, she eventually gets raped. Like there's the revenge that happens to these people is like once they get caught, like this documentary crew, you know, doing all of the worst things, like all of the worst things. There's even a scene where there's like an abortion that happens. Like this woman, pregnant woman, is tied up to these posts, and all the other women from the tribe are like beating her, and like another one's like ripped a feet, and it looks like it looks like a formed fetus, like far more than what the pro-lifers are saying in Texas. Like it looked like a almost born kid, and then they just put it in a hole and covered up. But everything, the way, all of those super graphic things that look super realistic, right? Which, with the contrast of when you go back into the quote unquote real world, everything is like filmed in this kind of very, very standard theatrical. Like I really appreciated the contrast in those tones of the documentary footage, and just how shaky, and how like, you know, you have the film being distorted and disrupted, and like the quality of it damaged in just certain parts. So it's not brutal constantly. Like, I mean, there's still a lot of brutality, don't get me wrong, but it could have been even worse. But the whole reason is to illustrate how horrible colonizers are. Like this is what they do. This is what colonizers do to indigenous people, and have done throughout the history of mankind, as far as we know, at least modern history. White people rape, pillage, murder, and frame their activities as like a conquest, as a positive, as we saved these people. That's how it's in the history of humanity. It's framed as them trying to act like they're doing a positive. And this movie is confronting that bullshit. This movie's confronting that idea of this, like the reality of what colonizing an area populated by indigenous people, the reality, the brutality that happens. That's what this movie is showing. The brutality of colonization. And showing how the society, how the infrastructure of capitalism and just humanity, the institutionalized racism of humanity, frames all of these events as some kind of positive, as some kind of beneficial thing. Like, we helped. We did a good thing. Oh, yeah, we did. Oh, but the Native Americans killed themselves too. So what we did wasn't much different from, it's like, oh, yeah, watch Cannibal Holocaust. You want to talk about a film that puts in your face, in the most realistic and brutal fashion, a mirror up to society. Because that is all of our society, is this fake thing where it's like living in a city, wearing a suit, commuting to a day job. We are somehow at a higher level of existing than somebody that may have been just a native to a place living a simple life. Because when you see in this movie, when they first, before these tribes had, like, the first time they get contact with these white documentary crew, they're nice. They're like, they're not hostile at all. But then you see the second time, and they've learned a lesson that, colonizers don't give a fuck. Do not give a fuck. And this movie puts that in your face in the most brutal way. So when this dock crew starts getting got by the cannibals, it's horrific. Like, you see one of them get his dick cut off. You see the female obviously get raped and murdered, and her head, she gets decapitated. You see one guy's body get torn, and it's like, it looks real. Like, you want to talk about movies doing special effects that look real as fuck. And of course, the shaky, low-quality camera adds a lot to that. But all of those things add up to a very realistic-looking kind of scenario of brutality, like in a very nauseating level, which is also part of the contrast of this like, you have this brutal footage from the Amazon contrasted to just the standard static shots, generic shots of people in modern society. Like, it's artistically, like, an amazing movie. Like, as far as wanting to put an idea, a message out into the world of how, zombie movies do it to a very small extent compared to this. Like, so many zombie movies is like, oh, the humans are more dangerous than the zombies. Humanity, people, like, general humans in humanity are far more of a threat to people's livelihoods than zombies are. And this movie takes that type of idea and turns it up to 1,000 in the most brutal way. And people didn't get killed, even though it looks like it. A guy didn't get his leg cut off, even though there's a scene that looks like a dude got his leg cut off. But then you're seeing scenes with animals where it's like, that has to be real. Like the scene where they open up, they catch a turtle, a giant tortoise. Turtle. I think it was a tortoise. It didn't have flippers. Turtles have flippers. Tortoises have feet, right? This one had feet. So it's like an Amazonian tortoise, let's say. Big, old. But they catch it, and it is a brutal scene. Chop the head off, and it's like, these are animals, because unless it's like the most masterful puppetry, because they're reacting like animals do when they die. They don't get like, this animal gets taken apart while it's alive. Like, it's not like they kill it and then they start to gut it and clean it and process it. It's like it's a living turtle. They chop the head off, and then they go to gutting it, cutting the limbs off, parting it out. Which people eat turtles. People eat everything. And, seeing somebody clean an animal, I mean, turtles seem to be quite a different. And I mean, just the fact that this turtle was not killed first. It was dismembered while not that far from life. It's a very brutal scene. And I can't imagine that being fake. That has to be real. And I'm sure they actually ate the animal. I'm sure a lot of this was filmed in places where they could get away with stuff. I don't know the details of how this was made. But throughout this movie, because things are so graphic and so realistic looking, you're constantly asking yourself, what is real? And I believe that's exactly what this movie wants you to do. I think it's so intentional that they make the brutality of this movie, of what colonizers do, like the most real, the most visceral, the least sugar coated, candy coated, smooth edges. It's showing the reality of what humans have been doing throughout history in the most visceral way, and then contrasting that with this facade of living in a city, going about your day. It's like that's where that all came from. It's brutal, but it's the point is like it's big. It's big. Let's see. Is there anything I missed here? But anyway, let me just finish with the kind of the breakdown of the movie. So they see all this footage, right? And then you see the people getting torn apart and all that stuff. And right after the screening, one of the producers or whatever that was sitting in the room, it was like the scientists and a couple of the producers from the network, gets on the phone and he's like, burn all of the footage. Like, the company had seen enough. Like, it was trying to release it up until that last scene where everybody died. They see everybody get brutally murdered, which is like justifiable. Like, seeing that documentary crew getting like just torn apart, I'm rooting for the indigenous people tearing them apart. And I eat them. Whatever you do, I don't care. I don't agree with cannibalism, but like, I'm sure the cannibalism that went on isn't like the only thing that they did. It's not like they just ate people, and it's not like they're going somewhere else to eat people. It's not like they went to New York City and started eating people. It's like they're warring with another group. I'm sure throughout that war, people die. And when food is scarce, sure, I can see a situation where people eat people. But what that documentary crew is like exponentially more inhuman than anything a cannibal can do. And it's the last line of this movie, as the scientist is leaving the studio after the screening, is who is the real cannibals? Who are the real cannibals? Right? Who is the real cannibal? It says something like that. Which is, this whole movie has been, comparing and contrasting. I mean, just our society, that's what we did. You want to see what a version of what settlers did to the Native Americans? Watch this movie, man. I mean, it's brutal, and I mean, it's a horrific movie. It will stick with you. Like, I'm talking Faces of Death level, like reality looking stuff. I mean, you're going to see animals probably die. I would imagine all the animals in this film died. But you're going to see a lot of other crazy stuff that has to be fake. There's a scene with a woman, I believe it was the same one that I think they raped, and then they put her on a giant spike. And it looks like a woman with a spike going through her body from her ass out her mouth. Looks real. And that's one of the scenes where it's like the cameraman, one of the documentary cameraman, he's like panning down the body, and the part of the body where it's the bush. I mean, you see it, but then there's like video distortion because like we don't want to see just a solid. Like we don't want to be offensive. Let's not show a pussy for 3 seconds on camera. But the fact that the film, it like every aspect of this works at making it the most brutal statement on modern society. Yeah. It's a crazy movie. I'm glad I watched it. I can see why it's like, as far as brutality wise, it's not like it was just brutality for brutality's sake. It like has a big message, and the film itself is showing a contrast in the filmmaking and how it's great. It's surprisingly how brutal and horrific and traumatizing this movie is. It's also like a great piece of artwork. So, welcome to October, everybody. This has been Cannibal Holocaust. This has been the Cannibal Holocaust review. Be safe. New episodes of The Ray Taylor Show come out every single day. Subscribe on IGTV, YouTube, and everywhere else podcasts are found. Binge the full week ad-free over at patreon.com/inspired disorder. Buy Ray Taylor Show merch over at inspireddisorder.com. And follow the show on Instagram at Ray Taylor Show. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Peace out!